Good evening, and thank you for joining us for our spring concert tonight. My hope is that the hard work and dedication of our students is showcased throughout this evening. As I'm sure that you've seen in this first song, there's been significant musical growth that has taken place from both ensembles this year. Hi, buddy. Our first selection was called Seagate Overture by James Swearingen. One thing that was fun and new to our symphonic band for this piece was the incorporation of 7/8 time signature for a few measures throughout the piece. The next selection that we have for symphonic band is called Where Dolphins Play by Chandler Comer. Chandler Comer wrote this piece for the Pine Island Academy Band in St. Augustine, Florida, and it was his intent to capture the playful nature of dolphins since it was that school's mascot. We hope you enjoy Where Dolphins Play. Our next piece is a pirate-themed song by Randall Standridge. He writes that the mysterious and haunting voices of the sea serve as the inspiration for this next chapter in the A Pirate's Adventures series. So this is part 2. Having escaped Shadow Cove, Captain Fang and his crew are lured to a mysterious isle by a siren song, where they are hypnotized until attacked by fiends and demons. So one of the big things that we worked on for this song was singing as a group, which, as you can imagine, in band, people are kind of reluctant to do that. So my hope is that they sing loud enough for you to be able to hear them tonight, and if they don't, well, our mics will pick them up and maybe they'll project them out further for you. So please enjoy Sirens. right, Symphonic Band has one more song left for you tonight. Their final selection is by the Japanese composer Naoya Wada. So, Wind Ensemble did a piece by this composer on their first concert this year. This one's called Tales of an Epic Adventure. So in this piece, Wada explains that the beginning of adventures bring hope, courage, and excitement. The joy that we gain through the encounters and the tough trials in any compelling quest inspires and encourages our growth. After this song, we'll have a quick stage change while Wind Ensemble gets on stage and Symphonic Band joins the audience. We hope that you enjoy Symphonic Band's final piece, Tales of an Epic Adventure. All right, welcome to the Wind Ensemble portion of the concert. I'm going to apologize ahead of time because we've got some awards tonight and we've got some other stuff to talk about that includes both ensembles for solo and ensemble, stuff like that. So my in-betweens might be a little bit airy, we'll say. Our first selection tonight for the Wind Ensemble is called Undertow, and it's by John Mackey. As Jake Wallace, a fellow band director, puts it, many characteristics in Mackey's music are present here, including biting dissonance within a tonal context, mixed meter, heavy percussion, and a pervasive ostinato. The song constantly switches between a 7/8 and 4/4, so it gives you this feel of constantly being off by a beat, or kind of like you're being pulled out to the ocean and then thrown back into a score with an undertow. So please enjoy Undertow by John Mackey. All right, at this point, I'd like to recognize students that are in solo ensemble. So, Symphonic Band and Wind Ensemble, if you did a solo or a group event at solo ensemble this year, please stand up. Okay, so we had like 170 some odd events at the high school here between band, choir, and orchestra. So a lot of events that our students were a part of. Now, those of you that are going to state for an event this year, go ahead and stand up if you're going on to state. So state is next weekend, next Saturday, May 3rd at the UWSP campus in Stevens Point. We'll have busing available for students that may need it. We'll have a bus that leaves right away in the morning and then comes back sometime early afternoon. We'll also have one that leaves here early afternoon and then comes back at the end of the day. There will be more information that goes out via email along with permission slips for that, so just keep your eye out for that email, okay? Our next selection is a medley of pieces from the Studio Ghibli film My Neighbor Totoro. Debuting in 1988, My Neighbor Totoro follows two sisters in their interactions with friendly wood spirits in post-war rural Japan. We hope that you enjoy the infectious melodies of My Neighbor Totoro. Ooh, hold on a second. In theater with costume changes, it takes way too long. Man, whoever's idea was to wear a Snuggie-like blanket, that's a terrible idea. So warm. It may have been my idea. All right, one thing we established last year and we continue to revise and perfect as we go on is a lettering system for the music department. So as a department between band, orchestra, and choir, we feel that it is important for us to recognize students that truly go above and beyond the regular requirements for our ensembles. The varsity letter modality seemed fitting to do that in. In order to receive a varsity letter, students need to earn a total of 1,000 points. Each year that they are part of an ensemble at MHS will earn them points, but by doing solos, taking on leadership roles, and going above and beyond helps get them the points they need to get up to 1,000. Basically, if they're in band, orchestra, or choir through 4 years, that gets them half the points. That gets them 500 points. So, the following students have earned their varsity music letter this year. Students, when I call your name, please come on up to receive your letter. Andrew Bennett. Jax Gardner. Oliver Johnson. Josette Kaiser. Joshua Peters. Madeline Resnick. And Aaron Rickinger. Let's have another round of applause for all of our 24-25 varsity music. So you may be asking yourselves, okay, they got to the 1,000 points. Now what do they do? Well, we do have a plaque that we had just started this year where we're going to have a 2,000 point club and a 3,000 point club. So as they keep accumulating these points throughout the years, they're going to be able to get their names up on that plaque, and that will just be memorialized in the music department for people to see for years to come, okay? All right, on to our next song. Our next song is called A Light Before Dawn by Gavin Lendt. This piece was written as a memorial for Debbie, who is a high school saxophone player in Iowa whose life was tragically cut short. This piece paints a portrait of colors and harmonies that are both emotional and complex. When I personally hear this piece, I envision the sunrise coming up over a still, glassy body of water. As the piece concludes, everything seems to be still and at peace, like a promise that the sun will always rise tomorrow, despite the tragedies that may surround us today. We hope that you enjoy A Light Before Dawn. That last song featured Josette Kaiser on flute and Jax Gardner on alto saxophone. Let's hear it for those two. Our next selection may sound like a recent repeat, and that's because it is. Our senior selection for this year is the jazz-influenced Jitterbug by Robert Buckley. It's always interesting to me to see which song our seniors will pick, because sometimes it seems very likely that they're gravitating towards one song, and then all of a sudden somebody brings up a whole nother song and everyone's like, oh yeah, I remember that, that was really good, that was really fun. That was kind of the case this year. Before we get to that though, I'd like to take a moment to recognize our seniors. Their hard work, dedication, and sticking with it through things like COVID is much appreciated, and they'll be greatly missed next year. In your concert program, you may have noticed that there's a biography for each senior that includes their musical journey, things that they are involved in outside of the band department, and what they're planning to do after high school. As I introduce each senior, they'll stand up, and please feel free to applaud for them as they stand up. So, Haley Baltus will be going to Mid-State Technical College for cosmetology. Peyton Bremer will be going to St. Mary's University as undecided at the moment. Alan DeJarlis will be going to UW Eau Claire for genetics and hematology. Kennedy Grove will be attending UW Oshkosh for psychology. Reese Johnson will be attending UW Eau Claire for business administration. Olivia King will be attending UW Stout for psychology. Joshua Peters will be attending Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University for aerospace engineering. Christina Rentmeester will be attending UW Green Bay for criminal law. Madeline Resnick will be attending Carroll University for music therapy. And Aster Vensky will be attending UW Eau Claire for elementary education. Let's have one final round of applause for all the seniors for the hard work. All right, I told you I'm going to get long-winded tonight. All right, every year we recognize outstanding senior musicians in band through a few awards, through our John Philip Sousa Award, the Louis Armstrong Jazz Award, and our Director's Award for Band. Students receive a plaque or a desk piece with their name and year on it, and then that same thing also gets added to our ongoing plaques that hang up in the band room to show who has won those awards through the years. All right, we'll start with the Director's Award. So the Director's Award for band is awarded to an outstanding band member within the senior class. This year's recipient is a student that has worked hard in many different facets of the music program. They have contributed time to orchestra winds and pit orchestra, and have helped out many times with elementary band's Monday rehearsals. I'm honored to present the 2025 Director's Award for Band to Alan DeJarlis. The Louis Armstrong Jazz Award is our next one. The past few years I've introduced this award at our jazz concert, but I figured let's do this in front of a crowd with more people, all right? So, the Louis Armstrong Jazz Award was introduced in 1974, and it honors outstanding jazz musicianship at the high school level. This year's recipient is a student who has worked very hard to perfect their playing and continues to provide a strong pulse for the jazz ensemble. They enthusiastically handle every chart that you throw at them, and they absolutely love taking solos. I'm jazzed to present the 2025 Louis Armstrong Jazz Award to Joshua Peters. All right, on to the John Philip Sousa Award. So this award was introduced in 1955, and it honors one of the top seniors in band. The award recognizes superior musicianship and outstanding dedication back to the band program. This year's recipient is a student that has always gone above and beyond to expand their musicianship, the musicianship of their peers, and the musicianship of those that are growing up in the program. And they exemplify the overall excitement of being in band. They have always dedicated their free time to helping out with every elementary band rehearsal possible for them. And they have performed in every single musical production in the pit orchestra throughout all 4 years of high school. It is with great honor that I present the 2025 John Philip Sousa Award to Madeline Resnick. So it's always interesting because as a department, we always talk about these awards and who we're seeing through the years as people that have done that extra step and gone the extra mile. So this year I decided I was going to have the students go ahead and take a survey to show me things that maybe I wasn't seeing or things that the program hasn't seen. And what we have seen as directors was just reflected through their peers. So it was really that cool moment of really solidifying who these awards were going to go for. So, all right, that's all. I've got a very small amount left of talking to do. So I'm done talking before this next song. So here is Jitterbug featuring Tanner Giese on trumpet, and this is the senior selection for 2025.
privilege of telling you about someone who has had a significant impact during my high school career. Many of the seniors got to start their band career 6th grade with Mr. Niener. However, I met Mr. Niener during high school. That being said, I want to take a moment to highlight the qualities that Mr. Niener just. Not just a great teacher, but a mentor and role model for all of us. Mr. Niener has helped me in so many ways. His encouragement to help others when they're struggling has made me a better person. And he always reminds us to have fun while we're living. Mr. Niener is one of the most understanding people I know. He listens to my daily rants. I'm not sure where I would do that.
Mr. Niener has not only helped us to grow our musicality, he's helped us to become mature and independent young adults as well. He's taught us to notice both the small details and the overarching themes and meanings in music as well as life. Most importantly, he managed to make band a memorable and fun experience for all of us.
Mr. Niener, thank you so much for everything you've done for us, and especially for me. You've been a monumental part of our high school careers. Your perseverance and kindness have helped us be better people, and now we can say that our lives would not be the same without you. You've answered my millions of questions that were constant, so thank you very much. So here is a token of our gratitude, even though nothing can truly express how much you mean to us. So thank you so much.
They're trying to make me cry. Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. All right. Thought I was going to get away without having those are wonderful stories. Thank you all for sharing those. I appreciate that. All right, we got one last song for you all tonight. So thanks again for coming out. Our last song is called Tempest of the Ocean, and it depicts the cycle of the oceanic life. So there's certain parts that may be like the cute little sea creatures kind of floating around like seahorses doing their own thing. And then there's heavier stuff that is the big creatures of the deep coming in and eating up those little cute sea creatures. The composer, Rossano Galante, has written for over 75 different studio films. Probably heard of a few of them, so here's a short list of them. Venom, A Quiet Place, The Mummy, The Avengers, and Die Hard. So that's just a really short list of his over 75 films he's written for. One thing that the students have needed to get comfortable with playing his music is that he never writes using a key signature. So those of you that have been in band or orchestra or choir before, you know, at the beginning of a song or certain sections, there's a key signature that tells you which notes are sharp and which are flat. That's not the case here. He says, everything's fair game, and I'm just going to write in the sharps and flats as you need to see them and as you need to play them. So you really never truly know what key you are in. So please enjoy Tempest of the Ocean, and that will be our last one for the evening. Thanks again, everybody. All right, that's all for our concert. Thank you all very much for coming again tonight. Students are going to get their instruments upstairs and then their pieces and stuff, and then you're free to take off or chat with them or do whatever you need to do. Thank you all very much.